The quote stated above is very true to a third degree burn. That's how deep this quote hits me in my Jimmy Fox soul. I used to judge anime only being for dweebs until I realized Full Metal Alchemist and Inuyasha were animes, and by far two of the greatest animes ever. I used to think meat was disgusting, but now you can catch me at every PETA rally with a baconator in my hand. Never judge a book by its cover. I say it again because it's deeply ingrained into the foundation of proof, and my latest example with this quote in my experience while playing Far Cry 6. I saw White Light's video on the game and concluded that it was mediocre, and he's right in his judgment. When it comes to the lousy shooting mechanics that have you miss 70% of your shots due to the shitty recoil, the exploration is massive, maybe too massive, with collectibles being too close to one another. The god awful Ubisoft trademark of showing everything on the map, making the map have a bad case of chickenpox. The driving is fucking horrendous. Like, my god, Johnny Boy, why the fuck do all the cars drive like the speed bike from Tron? I prefer the horses. But these dumb bitches don't even jump nor swim in the water. The only benefit to these magnificent creatures is when they throw you off their back once you get too close to the edge of a cliff. All of these criticisms are true and make the overall game a 7 out of 10 with the same story format as the past 4 Far Cry games. But where this game achieves a 10 out of 10, and for me, is the portrayal of how a dictatorship is. And I couldn't think of a better actor to portray the wicked evilness other than Moff Gus himself, Giancarlo Esposito. No, I don't know how to say a lot of these names, so hey, I haven't seen Breaking Bad or The Mandalorian, but I've seen The Boys, and his performance as Edgar, boy oh boy, he does put Homelander in his place. From the very beginning of the game, we are thrown into the gulag that is the country of Yara, under the regime of Anton Castillo, inspired by Cuba's very own ruthless Fulgencio Batista. Danny, our protagonist, and his or her friends are being drafted to fight against the guerrillas known as Lipitad. And if you say it quickly enough, it sounds like Libertard or Libtard. Danny runs through the alleyways and we see some pretty brutal sights along the way to the boat.
Stay down!
There's executions on full display, which I appreciate because this shit happens under dictatorships, from the killing fields of Pol Pot to Stalin's reign of terror's Great Purge. Do I even have to mention our favorite poster boy with the bad haircut and mustache, Adolf's final solution? We see this playing out, sadly, under Castillo's Purge of a Generation, A Night for the Pogrom, his great leap forward into all-controlling power. A picture is worth 1,000 words, a movie has a theme, art has purpose, and brutal displays are a sight to behold if you want to establish ultimate fear into the population. We see Castillo's army capture people, force slave labor onto the drug farms, and death seems to follow the soldiers everywhere they go. Latin American dictators have a history of all of this, all across the 20th century. Rafael Trujillo of the Dominican Republic is one of the worst, with his Parsley massacre of 50,000 Haitians, jailing people who criticized him before and during his reign, and renamed the capital Trujillo City. Renaming a capital to your own name is major small dick energy, if you ask me, folks. But it establishes fear for those citizens who live in the premise. It's psychological manipulation warfare, as people begin to think Trujillo is everywhere and anywhere. One hell of entrance to show you're the big man in charge who got that dog in him was Augusto Pinochet, backed by the CIA, who bombed the Chile Congress building where the president killed himself after saying goodbye to his countrymen. He took a mugshot showing who the real boss was, then Pinochet rounded up every scholar leader, ran them over with tanks. Making a demonstration to the public is effective, but infesting the education system with your evil seeds is equally effective to carry on the hate a dictator births upon a nation. Hitler's Mein Buch zum Anschauschen, Zerknen, Leschen, and Skorpin. I can't say that shit. I ain't gonna pronounce it correctly because I don't give a shit. It's a Nazi book. My book to look at, to draw, to read, and to write is a straight up how to e-wiki guide on how to be a proper perfect Nazi. Kurzer Arbeit der Russian Bund, or Short Synapse of Ethology, is a heavily anti-Jewish book explaining how the Jewish people are different anatomically to Aryans, trying to dehumanize them even more. Mao Zedong's Cultural Revolution had students forming the Red Guards who attacked teachers who taught, represented, and were the old traditional ways of China. This permanent change in China's educational system stands today. This is blunt rewritten history to please the CCP brainwashing. Long live Taiwan, long live East Turkestan, fuck you all bitches. Like a famous loser Democrat from Virginia once said, I don't think parents should be telling schools what they should teach. I bring up the school because it was here where I saw Castillo's use of the education system for Yara's future, and it's not a sight for the uneasy. Yeah, I know it's a game, but seeing these charred bodies in piles is an act of barbarianism. This is a human violation. Where the fuck is the UN? Like, dear God, can you imagine the more can you imagine the more behind the can you imagine can you imagine that behind
You could you do you want you could do so you
can you imagine the fucking mourning that went behind these playgrounds? Or these concentration camps? Killing grounds? This is an effective environmental storytelling that I love. This makes me want to fight even harder against Castillo and carry on my playthrough. We are gorillas after all. Rule 16. A gorilla's revolution never ends. Once a gorilla, always a gorilla. Rule 20. A quote that Che Guevara can live by. This wannabe homophobic dictator inspired Castro's regime and was on his way to starting more revolutions until he was shot dead in the head in the jungle. Thank God, one less hateful future dictator to not worry about. Something else dictators don't want to worry about as well is a new age generation who won't listen to traditions, whether they be ancient or modern. What can you do to these deplorables who just don't seem to get that you're trying to bring paradise back to your home country? Simple. Silence them. Tiananmen Square is a perfect example for this caveman attitude. Protesters go out to Tiananmen Square to tell the CCP to fuck off. The CCP doesn't like this and unleashes hell onto the protesters. If the bratty kids won't stop talking, then mute them. Or you can take a Hail Mary from the playbook of Hitler, Stalin, King Leopold II, Pol Pot, and countless others, and send these unbelievers into a secluded camp for the summer. The parents are already going to be against dictators, so why not go after their children? And if the kids resist to the change of the status quo, then take them and re-educate them. If they still resist, then it's time to throw that baby to the bathwater. Imperial Japan were cavemen, and I'm using that word as the nicest one I can say because if you know about the Nanking Massacre, then you know there are more hateful words we can use to describe the monsters who partook in those inhuman acts. China goes after future generations of Uyghur Muslims by sterilizing women. Their one child policy, which hurts Uyghurs on a religious aspect as well, for each baby is a blessing from Allah. Pesacus of Romania left orphans to starve in orphanages, and when some didn't get adopted, they would either be killed or recruited into the army or a labor camp. The Cantonese battalion was Tsar Nicholas's decree of forcing Jewish boys into the army and serving for 25 years. If the children were too young, then they'll be heading to the schools where they'll be trained to be good Russians. Dictators will always attack, simulate, and redesign the future generation to the vision they see fit. Anton Concilio knows this, but it seems he failed with his son Diego. Donnie doesn't get to kill Anton. In a Hitler twist of events, Concilio shoots Diego in the heart and proceeds to slit his own throat with a tobacco knife. This scene alone deserves its own segment. The ending cutscene is fucking written fantastic. The camera work is on cinematic levels. The acting is crisper than the drawer in my fridge. Let's begin with my question. Why did Anton kill Diego? The game shows us Donnie promising Anton they will protect Diego. Anton doesn't believe Danny. This is a multi-layer cake of explanation. So let's break it down firstly. 1. Danny won't be able to keep Diego safe for a long time. He is the son of Anton after all.
Victory! Juan, he shot Diego in the fucking chest.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. Forget the kid,
Fuck
Danny.
you, he's bleeding out.
The dictator who birthed the Libertad movement through his vile hatred for revolutionists. Castillo's father was gunned down in front of him by revolutionists. That shit is traumatizing alone. A historical example I can use here is Mussolini, who was voted out of power only for Italians to viciously beat and hang him like the dog he was. Muammar Gaddafi gave us one of the best trends of the early 2000s after his own people dragged him out of the sewer like the rat he was. Filmed his last moments on 720p quality. Given these examples, it's reasonable to think Ghani's empty promise was a lie to Castillo. Everyone hates Castillo. They want his head on a platter. So, what do you think Libertad or anyone else can do to Diego? Since he is the son, the future face of Castillo's regime.
I promise.
Lies.
2. Anton knew Diego wouldn't be able to carry out his true vision for Yarn Paradise. This makes Diego's death even more sad because he never had a choice in his own faith. Oh, you dumbass! Choosing his own faith, his own form of leadership, or his own philosophy on life. Since the beginning of the game, we've seen Diego running away from his future of controlling Yara. Diego has proven to his father that he isn't a true Yarn. He doesn't take orders from his father when told to kill Yuan. He misses an innocent bird, but is able to shoot his cousin, a Yarn general. Point blank, no hesitation, as if Diego's trying to kill the true Yarn. Diego wanted Danny and the other outcasts to live once he was caught by his father on the boat. He was willing to let the fake Yarns escape rather than keeping his father's philosophy alive. In Anton's eyes, this was a mercy killing of his legacy. To see all it crumble under his hands and slip like grains of sand between his fingers rather than fade away with history. In Far Cry 6, you
Yarans have lost their pride. They have
constant
forgotten Yaran values.
constant
And they leech off our resources. They seek only to indulge their own selfish desires and nothing else.
You constantly hear Anton Castillo throughout Yara on the radio, TV, billboards. Jesus Christ, if you won't believe how many billboards I have destroyed within my first hour of gameplay, this dude must have the chodiest of chodes if he has to overcompensate this fucking hard. If you can even get hard. You are constantly reminded of who's in charge when under a dictatorship. There are statues in honor of leaders erected across the country. A dictator's words echo in the air, in frequency, and among your fellow statesmen. It's propaganda, my folks. The communist USSR and the PCR for China are masters of the propaganda poster, where they constantly ask to unite the people under communism to be one with the state. Castillo's word of what makes a true yarn is an in-game example of separating the us from the thems, a classic dictator tactic in dehumanizing bigotry. Tribalism is the name of the game, and nationalism is a tool that feeds the fuel of division. As dictators call it patriotism, when in reality, there's a real big difference. Patriotism is upholding the values, history, and principle of your home country. Nationalism are assholes who think their country is superior and tries to demonize other countries. A parrot only repeats what it hears daily, and it seems Castillo is running his mouth 24/7 in Yara. Empty promises are more full than the empty stomachs than the rumble and the citizens who blindly handed over their goods, land, culture, and beliefs to the hands of false prophets. Ottoman landowners sold their land to Israelis in 1800s to make a profit from themselves, not caring for the future, current, and past turmoils of the people or the land they had just sold off. We're not going to get into that situation on this channel. Stalin permanently settled down nomadic tribes for them to produce cotton for the USSR, all while assimilating them to Russian culture and erasing their original cultural identity. China claims they have rights to multiple areas around China, but in reality, these are areas the Huns conquered and lost throughout time. Now, China wants them back for resourceful reasons like oil, microchips, land for food production, and to spread influence. China even does this through economic manipulation by handing out loans to countries that can't pay them back. So the country has to fork over something to China. This is just pure economic evil, and everyone's ignoring it, and it kind of makes me mad. This is how you can tell when it's genuinely me talking and not on the script because I get bored. No, I sound boring, but when I'm talking real, I get really flabbergasted. You need to look up the second Silk Road. It is beyond the worst, disgusting thing ever. Like, oh, bro, their hatred for Uyghur Muslims extends into Pakistan. That's how bad it is. It is now extending into Africa. I have just learned this from another book talking about waste. It was like something called wasteland. Literally, China is moving down to Africa, putting businesses within Africa next to African businesses who repair tech stuff like iPhones, computers, all that stuff. Because, in Africa, they're a little bit late on technology. They get like to 2008, 2010 old stuff. Same thing for like Latin American countries. It's kind of like a little bit horrible. They barely just finished game PlayStation 2 games back like in 2015, I think. That's a little bit outdated some of these countries are. But these Chinese countries who sell this technology will literally fucking blackball and lowball the prices so everyone goes to them and not to the African country, not to the African stores. And then they just literally outsell them, buy the land more and all that stuff. It's so, oh no, don't get me even started on the farmlands in America, guys. Don't get me started on that. I just can't. There's a whole multi-layer cake on why you should hate the Chinese government. Not the people, not the culture, just the government. The government is the most evil thing. You guys talk about white supremacy? No, you guys are fucking wrong. You guys are wrong. There's a there's like a Chinese economic government. I don't even, they're like semi quasi capitalistic communistic form of philosophy going on there, dude. It is evil. When I think of the umbrella company, I think of the Chinese government. I ran it off for too long. I'm so sorry. Yasser Arafat embezzled Palestine's wealth for himself, leaving the country's economy in ruins while his people suffered. Castillo took over Yara for his drug manufacturing, propaganda machine, and military control. These are our main objectives to get rid of, so we can liberate Yara from this regime. As a dictator, you must have your people stay in line and follow your word. But no one man can do this alone. Dictators need friends too, after all. Friends in high places are fun to have around, but a friend with a gun is always going to have your back. Just look at the majority of Latin American dictators, where they were generals who commanded armies and gained loyalty of their soldiers through their actions, courage, and being within the trenches themselves. That reliability was the key factor for Ida Amin, the cannibal butcher of Uganda. Where the real president left the country for a meeting, and Amin just woke up and said, "Okay, poop time." With the whole army being on his side, it was the shortest coup ever in history. Dictators tend to show off their small dicks with military parades. Stalin used to do this, and the Uns of North Korea still do this to this day. Anton Castillo does the same with his armed guards patrolling the streets constantly. This man is so powerful that he's willing to sell homemade nukes to the highest bidder. This minigame side content where you can infiltrate a location and have to steal, evacuate, and protect this backyard meth lab style nuclear football from fire troops who are OP'd, flying bombs, inhaling bullets, all while avoiding the sun like your Kino with the pearl of a lifetime. This dude would hold on arms parade if his tiny roads would fucking let him. The reason for this can be a plethora of factors. One is to remind the people who are really in charge and who are the most dangerous, powerful people are, in combative terms, are aligned. Another factor is to display their wrathful rage as their mechanical destroyers roll down trying to instill fear into the world. How are people fooled into falling into these monsters? Like Lil Dicky once said, we getting pussy with our personality. The code of personality is a wonderful phenomenon that repeats itself in history from Charles Manson gaining a whole family to leaders with iron grips over the public. Now, let's get this out the way just because you have a huge following or it's borderline obsession doesn't make that person a dictator off the bat. A leader's action, policies, and abuse power over the state is what makes a dictator to me, not just a cult of personality. Cult of personality does play a hand to it, but it's not the number one thing. Hitler had youth groups who helped carry out hate crimes against Jews during Kristallnacht, the Night of Broken Glass. Mao's Red Guards changed the culture of China for the rest of its life. Mussolini's black shirts disrupted the political process by being annoying assholes and beating up socialists in the streets of Italy. But how are these groups able to form to do the evil bidding of dictators? They're relatable AF, and that's not a joke. These are proven facts. Hitler was an undercover agent for Germany and was tasked to infiltrating a far right meeting. At the end of the night, it was Hitler who was leading the nightly sermon where he unleashed his hatred for the Jewish people, who were hated all over the world from America to Europe to Russia to the Middle East since the dawn of time, the BC era. I will not stand for rewritten of history, especially when it comes to genocide and simulation, because I will never do the same when it comes to Native Americans. And neither of you should do the same when it comes to Israeli Jews. Mao was a farm boy. Although more richer than other farmers, Mao joined the resistance and fought alongside his fellow farmers, but he never really fought any battles, wanting to unify the Chinese people through diplomatic reasons. Castro was a guerrilla fighter who wanted to end the dictatorship of Batista for its inequality. When you are one with the people, struggle alongside with your statesmen, and are the one hearing out their woes, then people are on point to growing their following and message that can be related to those who are willing to make their voices heard. And that's really it. Do want to take back what I said in the beginning of the video. After playing the game, Far Cry 6 is not really mediocre. It does have its parts, it does need defects, don't get me wrong. But the overall take, story, ending, environmental storytelling, the thing they were going for, I think this is possibly the best example they ever done when it comes to one of these dictatorship crazy people taking over an area. Far Cry, what was it, 3? Crazy guy. Don't know the definition of insanity. That guy, good game, but that was, like, what, drug addict taking over island. They've been trying to do people taking over areas and, like, cult stuff, like, the past 3 games, sort of really, since Far Cry 4, I think. Honestly, the best example on how to do it, and people need to put this up there with, Wolfenstein, the first one. But that's really it, guys. Yeah. So yeah, best Far Cry game I can only say. Leave a like, comment, subscribe for more. I'm so sorry. It's a very long video. More videos coming out. I'm taking longer, but I've been a little busy. Life's been a little getting in the way. I've been playing too much Bannerlord and Medieval Dynasty, which I want to do videos on too. I have other stuff going on. Don't worry, guys. I'm gonna be getting more stuff on. I keep saying I'm gonna put more stuff out, but I keep lying. So we'll see. We'll get 5 videos out this year. I promise. Let's go.